Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, tens of thousands of troops are deployed to hotspots of unrest in South Africa. Some communities try to clean up from days of looting as the chaos exacerbates racial tensions between communities. Also, Ethiopia accuses unspecified aid agencies of being part of a propaganda campaign against them as the humanitarian crisis caused by 8 months of fighting in Tigray deepens. The conflict now sees local TPLF fighters facing off against ethnic Amharas. And as Africa's COVID deaths surged by 43% in a week, the continent's chronic shortage of vaccines sees Ivory Coast ramping up efforts to convince more people to get the jabs that are on offer. It's turned to a mobile clinic taking vaccines into neighbourhoods. Now, in one of the largest deployments of soldiers since 1994, South Africa started deploying 25,000 troops to quell a week of unrest that's cost at least 117 lives. Many were trampled during chaotic and economically devastating looting. About 10,000 troops were sent in Thursday morning to back up overwhelmed police. The National Defence Force has also called on its 12,000-strong reserve force. Protests first erupted after former President Jacob Zuma began a 15-month sentence for contempt of court last Friday. Although Gauteng province was relatively stable on Thursday, there were renewed attacks in Zuma's home province of KwaZulu-Natal. Nsepeng Mutema tells us more about the deployment of extra security forces.
10,000 of the soldiers that have been deployed already are out on the streets. We have not actually seen them. There hasn't been a renewed or an extra presence of soldiers really in the various communities that we have gone to. And the reason I understand is because the soldiers that are out right now are actually going to protect national key points, power stations, dams, and cell phone towers, as well as actually transporting or escorting trucks that deliver fuel, food. And this is because main highways that connect the Johannesburg, which is the economic hub, and Durban, where the port where goods come into the country, the roads had been shut for a week now. And so the reason that we're not seeing these soldiers on the streets or in residential areas, as it were, could be because of this reason.
The ferocity of some of the attacks that have happened since last Friday have really taken many South Africans off guard. The government said on Thursday that about 10,000 rounds of ammunition that was found in Durban belonged to instigators of the violence. Now, does that suggest that there's some kind of coordinated agitators with specific strategy in mind behind all of this?
The police have been saying that, as well as the Defense Ministry and Intelligence Ministry, that there are people who are behind these attacks, either organizing or going out there themselves. And these people are said to be high-level people, not just everyday, people out on the street. These are people who are either in the intelligence community, members of the intelligence community, senior members, who are allies of the former president, or were part of the Umkhonto weSizwe. Umkhonto weSizwe is a military wing of the African National Congress that fought for the liberation of this country. So some of those people are allies of the former president, and they are said to have been involved. In fact, we've been, police have announced that they have arrested one person who is behind some of the worst violence we have seen.
And you were telling me when we were speaking earlier that the riots have really exacerbated racial tensions. How so?
Well, what has happened is communities have felt that the police were stretched or really nowhere to be seen, that they decided that they're going to arm themselves and protect themselves. And so in so doing, South Africa is a segregated country residentially. You have areas that are predominantly black, predominantly white, predominantly Indian. So when people arm themselves and protect their own communities and say that they don't want outsiders, it so happens that if a black person, for instance, and this has happened, goes into a neighborhood that is predominantly Indian or predominantly white, are being told that you are not wanted here, who are you? Even if people are there to buy food, to refuel. So that is really making an already fragile situation more precarious.
Nsepeng Mutema there speaking to us earlier on. Now, the Ethiopian government accuses aid groups of playing a destructive role in 8 months of conflict in the northern region of Tigray and of arming local TPLF fighters. Now, they began battling federal troops and their allies in November. Addis Ababa claims that it is the victim of propaganda campaigns, and it also denies blocking aid to Tigray. Humanitarian organizations say that access remains severely restricted. The World Food Programme insisted on its neutrality, saying that its priority is delivering food to communities facing famine. Despite a fragile unilateral government ceasefire, the conflict may be shifting, with Tigrayans facing off against ethnic Amharas from the neighbouring region. Nick Shuma with more.
After 30 years in Sudan, Asfaw Abera is back in his native Ethiopia. He is from the Amhara ethnic group, and he fled 30 years ago when Tigrayan forces got close. Now he has been relocated by the government to a part of Tigray that has long been claimed by Amharas. In the Amhara region, militias have formed. They say they were marginalized these last 3 decades when Tigrayan politicians dominated the government. And today, they are determined to fight Tigrayan forces. The conflict between Tigrayans and government forces erupted in November. Tensions had been rising between them ever since Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed came to power in 2018. He effectively ended the Tigrayans' domination of national politics. Late June, Tigrayans stunned many when they returned to the region's capital, and Ethiopian troops and their Eritrean allies left the area around Mekele. Now Tigrayans and their leader Debretsion Gebremichael say they want to take back the land that has been given to Amharas during the conflict.
Coronavirus deaths in Africa jumped by 43% last week. The World Health Organization saying that a lack of intensive care beds and oxygen drove up fatalities associated with COVID-19 to 6,273 the week of July 5th to 11th. That's up from 4,384 just from the previous 7 days. Now, there's a call for the continent to improve its production of oxygen to improve survival rates. Meanwhile, Africa still faces a chronic shortage of vaccines. Access to jabs is part of the problem, slow take-up and public scepticism another. Ivory Coast is turning to mobile clinics to make it easier for more people to get vaccinated. Our team reports.
It's 11 a.m. in Adjamé in the north of Abidjan. Alawa is finally getting her COVID-19 vaccine. For this shopkeeper living outside of the city, getting access to a vaccination center had been challenging until now.
It's much better having the truck right here in the market. It's easier for us.
Bringing the vaccine closer to the people, that's the idea behind mobile clinics like this one. In the last few days, 10 trucks have been deployed around the economic capital as part of the second phase of the anti-COVID vaccination campaign in the country, a strategy that's already proven effective, according to the clinic's workers.
People have a little more trust in it. There is more enthusiasm over the vaccine. Sometimes we give it to 400, 450 or 500 people a day.
But skepticism hasn't quite vanished yet. With rumors and conspiracy theories still circulating on social media, continued effort against misinformation remains crucial.
There was a point in time when the vaccine had a terrible reputation. Ivorians simply wouldn't get vaccinated. But as we continuously debunked and fact-checked, fake news gradually lost traction. But that doesn't mean we should stop communicating on this. We have to push through and keep on educating people.
Ivorian artists have also been involved in raising awareness in people. According to Zouglou music icon Siro, it is the artist's duty to lead by example.
I went and got my vaccine amid all these people. As opinion leaders and influencers, we have to be responsible. I saw some people try to demonstrate that their phone was like a magnet stuck to their arms. We got our vaccine. Guess what? Our phones didn't stick to our arms.
According to health authorities, 800,000 doses have been administered since the start of vaccinations in March. They are hoping to reach the 1 million mark in the coming days.
DR Congo has one of the lowest electrification rates in the world. In Kisangani, the country's third largest city, less than 10% of residents have power. That's barely above the national average of 8%. Our team reports.
It's 6 p.m. and the sun has just set in Kisangani. DR Congo's third largest city is plunged into darkness.
Hi kids, how are you?
Ida finds her children gathered under the only lamp in the living room. Her house is connected to the electricity grid but only receives power for 2 to 3 hours a week.
Since we don't have electricity, we use this charcoal iron. And this TV here works thanks to a solar panel.
For about €100, twice her monthly income, Ida installed a small solar panel on her roof.
It doesn't work well because there are days when it rains. The panel won't charge well because of the rain.
In Kisangani, 90% of households have no electricity. Power in the city comes from a single hydroelectric plant built in 1955. Its capacity is now 5 megawatts, down from an initial 20 megawatts. Only 2 out of the 3 turbines are still running at half capacity.
Turbine number 1 was replaced 10 years ago, but it stopped working again because of mechanical problems around the water lock gates. It's been out of order since 2017.
The power station in Kisangani is once again undergoing renovation thanks to Belgian funding. But even at full capacity, it will not meet the city's daily needs, which are estimated at 40 megawatts. In Kinshasa, the National Electricity Company says it has limited means to invest nationwide because less than 30% of clients pay their bills. But for this researcher, it all comes down to governance.
When they say clients do not pay their bills, what quality of service do they offer in return? Millions of US dollars have been pouring in from donors, including the World Bank. How has this money been used?
The electricity and public portfolio ministers have declined our request for comment.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks for joining us, and do so again if you can. Take care.